Kinda crazy, right? You wake up, everything looks fine, nothing is burning, no one called with bad news, but inside there's this low, steady hum that says, something's off. And the worst part is, you can't even name it. You've tried being grateful, you've tried working harder, you've even tried convincing yourself that this is just adulthood and everybody feels this way. But that little inner mismatch doesn't go away. That's not weakness. That's not you being dramatic. That's your soul tapping the mic and saying, hey, you're living too far away from who you actually are. We were taught to treat that feeling like a problem to fix. Maybe I need a new job, maybe I need a vacation, maybe I need to manifest harder. But what if that feeling isn't a bug? What if it's the dashboard light? Carl Jung, who actually spent his life watching how the human psyche works, said every person is born with an inner map. Not a moral code, not a to-do list, not a productivity system. A map. A quiet orientation toward who you were meant to become. And almost nobody gets educated to read that map. We get trained to read other people's maps, parents, culture, religion, social media, whatever is trending in your city. And then we wonder why we're exhausted. You can be successful and still be off your path. You can have the relationship, the car, the followers, and still feel hollow. That's not because you're ungrateful. It's because success built on the wrong self still feels like failure. You don't want more. You want mine. There's a big difference. So let me tell you something that most people won't say out loud because it doesn't fit the motivational quote vibe. Maybe you really are on the wrong path. Maybe the life you built is actually a costume. Maybe the person everybody loves is actually your persona, not your essence. And that is not a tragedy. That is the beginning of awakening. Jung noticed something powerful. Most suffering doesn't come from fate, it comes from disconnection. From living outward instead of inward. From performing instead of inhabiting your own soul. When you are too far from yourself, the psyche sends signals. First it whispers, boredom for no reason, restlessness even on a good day, feeling like you're watching life instead of living it. If you ignore that, it speaks louder, anxiety, burnout, relationships that drain you, repeating patterns. If you ignore that, it screams, depression, illness, crisis. Not as punishment, but as redirection. Your soul would rather interrupt your fake life than let you miss the real one. So if you're sitting here thinking, I don't even know who I am anymore, that's not the end. That's the exact doorway Jung called individuation, the journey back to the self, the real center. And no, it's not some mystical upgrade where you become perfect and calm forever. It's actually the opposite. It's becoming honest. It's taking off the masks you built to survive and saying, okay, this is me. Messy, powerful, shadow and light, all of it. The reason this matters is because you can't navigate life from the wrong center. If your ego, the little I that wants approval, is driving, it will always choose what is safe, what is praised, what is expected. But your deeper self is not interested in impressing anyone. It is interested in wholeness. And sometimes wholeness asks you to disappoint people. Sometimes wholeness asks you to change careers at 40. Sometimes wholeness asks you to admit, I don't actually want this life I built. That sounds scary, but let me flip it. How long do you want to go on pretending? How many years do you want to keep negotiating with a life that doesn't fit? How many times do you want to wake up and think, is this it? Your soul is not trying to ruin your stability. It's trying to restore your alignment. That's why you're hearing this now. Not when you were 15 and copying everybody else. Now, when pretending is getting expensive. So here's what I want you to do while we go through this journey. Stop pathologizing your emptiness. Stop calling yourself broken because you don't fit into a standardized life template. You might not be broken at all, you might be misaligned. And misalignment is fixable. Jung said the unconscious keeps sending material, dreams, symbols, inner nudges, until consciousness listens. Meaning, your life is already trying to talk to you. Your job is to start listening. This video, this teaching, is not a magic pill. It's an invitation. A map only works if you're willing to admit you're lost. And that's the hardest part for adults, right? To stop saying, no, I know what I'm doing, and finally say, actually, I don't. But I'm ready to know. If you can say that, you're already closer to your center than you were yesterday. So let's go deeper. You've heard me talk about this map of the soul, but what does that actually mean? Picture it like this. Inside you is an entire landscape, mountains, rivers, valleys, storms, sunlight. It's not random. It's structured. It has a center, it has roads, it has dead ends and hidden doors. Jung spent his whole life trying to chart that inner terrain, and what he found was mind-blowing. Your mind isn't just a bag of thoughts and memories. It's an ecosystem. Every emotion, every dream, every impulse is part of that ecosystem. The problem is, most of us live in only one small corner of it, the part we call the ego. The ego is the conscious me, the one who makes to-do lists, worries about reputation, and tries to control everything. But the ego is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lie layers of the psyche so deep, so alive, that if you ignore them long enough, they start running the show without you even noticing. Jung compared the psyche to a house with many floors. Most people never go beyond the front hallway. We decorate it, clean it, make sure it looks presentable for guests. But we never explore the basement, where the hidden memories live, or the attic, where the collective symbols of humanity are stored. That's why people repeat the same mistakes, attract the same types of relationships, or sabotage their own success. They're being run by forces they've never met. Those forces are what Jung called the unconscious. And inside that unconscious are three key areas: the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious, and the self, the ultimate center of it all. Let's start with the personal unconscious. That's the basement. It holds your repressed memories, traumas, and unprocessed emotions. Think of it like a storage room for everything you didn't know how to deal with at the time. Every "I'm fine" that wasn't true, every emotion you swallowed to keep the peace, every moment you pretended didn't hurt, that all gets stored there. And when the personal unconscious gets too full, it leaks. It leaks through sudden anger, irrational fear, nightmares, or self-sabotage. That's why healing isn't just about thinking positive thoughts, it's about going down there, flashlight in hand, and cleaning out what's been waiting for decades. Then there's something even deeper, the collective unconscious. This isn't just your story, it's the story of humanity itself. It's the universal layer we all share, where ancient symbols and patterns live. Think about how myths from opposite sides of the world tell the same story: the hero's journey, the wise old man, the mother, the trickster. Jung called these archetypes, and they're not just stories, they're energies that live inside you. Every time you face fear and rise anyway, the hero archetype activates. Every time you nurture or protect, the mother archetype moves. Every time you seek meaning, the sage within stirs. These archetypes are the landmarks on your soul's map, guiding you through different seasons of life. You're not inventing these energies, you're embodying them. Between the ego, the little I, and the self, the total I am, there are three key bridges: the persona, the shadow, and the inner opposites known as anima and animus. These are the roads that connect who you think you are with who you really are. Let's start with the persona. That's the social mask you wear to survive. We all have one. It's the role you learn to play, maybe the reliable one, the funny one, the overachiever, the peacekeeper. It helps you fit in. But the problem is, if you wear it too long, you start mistaking the mask for your face. The persona is useful, but it's not the truth. It's like a costume your soul wears to go out in public, but if you never take it off, you suffocate. Then there's the shadow. This is the part most people avoid because it's uncomfortable. The shadow holds everything you reject about yourself: your anger, jealousy, greed, shame, but also your hidden strengths, your wild creativity, your unapologetic power. Society teaches us to hide it, but the truth is, what you don't face controls you. Everything you deny in yourself, you end up projecting onto others. That's why people you can't stand often mirror the parts of you you're not ready to acknowledge. Facing the shadow isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. You can't heal what you won't face, and you can't integrate what you won't name. And then we come to the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies that live in all of us. For men, the anima is the inner feminine, intuition, emotion, depth, receptivity. For women, the animus is the inner masculine, logic, direction, structure, action. When these are unbalanced, relationships become chaotic. Men cut off from their anima become emotionally numb. Women cut off from their animus lose their sense of direction. But when they integrate, when feeling and reason work together, you become whole. You stop seeking your other half because you realize it's been inside you all along. At the very center of all these layers is the self, not the selfie self, not the resume self, the deep, organizing principle of your psyche. The self is the conductor of the inner orchestra. It wants harmony, not perfection. It doesn't care if you're successful, it cares if you're whole. When you live disconnected from it, life feels fragmented and meaningless. When you live aligned with it, even the pain starts to make sense. Because now, every experience, joy or suffering, becomes part of your evolution. The tragedy of modern life is that we've been trained to operate only from the surface, to polish the persona and ignore the depths. We've been educated to perform, not to integrate. That's why people who look confident on the outside often crumble in silence. They've built skyscrapers on top of unexamined foundations. Jung's map of the soul reminds us that meaning isn't found by climbing higher, it's found by digging deeper. So when you feel lost, it doesn't mean you failed. It means your ego has hit its limit. The solution isn't to run faster, it's to descend. To explore the architecture of your own psyche. To meet the characters that live inside you, the hero, the shadow, the wise one, the wounded child. They're not there to confuse you, they're there to guide you. Once you understand how your inner world is built, you'll stop wandering aimlessly and start walking with awareness. You'll realize that every conflict, every dream, every emotion is part of a vast inner geography, and that the map to it has been inside you all along. Have you ever wondered why, in a world with more comfort, more technology, and more opportunity than ever before, so many people still feel miserable? Why do people with good jobs, loving families, and shiny Instagram lives still wake up feeling empty? Jung had an answer for that long before burnout became a buzzword. He said that most modern suffering doesn't come from external problems, it comes from spiritual disconnection. We are not living our own lives. We are living borrowed ones. From the moment we are born, the world starts handing us scripts. Be a good child. Get the grades. Find the right career. Fit in. Don't rock the boat. Make people proud. But here's the problem, none of those scripts come from your soul. They come from a system that measures worth by performance and identity by comparison. And sooner or later, the soul starts to suffocate under all that pretending. You see, modern society trains us to be performers, not humans. From early on, we're rewarded for how well we can wear the mask. You're praised for being polite, not honest. You're celebrated for achievement, not authenticity. We are told that emotions are inconvenient, that silence is awkward, that success is proof of value. So we start editing ourselves to survive. We trade curiosity for competition, intuition for productivity, and presence for approval. And in doing so, we drift further and further from the self, that quiet center Jung talked about, the part of you that knows who you really are. Think about it. How many times have you said I'm fine when you were breaking inside? How many times have you worked yourself to exhaustion because slowing down felt like failure? How many times have you agreed to something just to avoid disappointing someone else? Those are not harmless habits. Those are symptoms of a culture that teaches you to betray yourself for belonging. Jung said that the more we identify with our persona, the social mask, the more we lose touch with our soul. And when the gap between those two widens, suffering rushes in to fill the space. The modern world worships the outer image. We've built entire economies on attention, validation, and comparison. We are constantly told who to be, what to want, what success should look like. And when we don't match that image, we assume something's wrong with us. But the real sickness isn't failure, it's imitation. You can't live meaningfully while chasing someone else's definition of meaning. The constant pursuit of more money, more followers, more recognition is like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. And deep down, the soul knows it. That's why, even when life looks good on paper, it still feels like something's missing. As Jung observed, what the modern world calls progress often comes at the cost of depth. We've become experts at building structures, but amateurs at building selves. We chase metrics instead of meaning. We value productivity over presence. We measure time by efficiency instead of experience. And all that speed, all that performance, comes with a silent consequence: alienation from the inner world. When you stop listening to your inner voice, something else takes over: noise. Constant, relentless noise. Notifications, news, opinions, advertising, it's a modern form of hypnosis. You stop hearing yourself because the volume of the world is always turned up. But here's the paradox: the more disconnected you are from your own soul, the louder you'll try to make your outer life. That's why so many people stay busy. Busyness becomes anesthesia. If you keep moving, you don't have to feel. If you keep achieving, you don't have to ask if it matters. But the soul doesn't care how impressive your resume looks. It cares whether you are alive inside. It will not settle for imitation. So when you don't listen to its whispers, it will scream. And those screams show up as anxiety, insomnia, addiction, depression, apathy. Not as punishment, but as alarm bells. They are the psyche's way of saying, you've wandered too far. Jung didn't see mental suffering as failure. He saw it as communication. Every panic attack, every breakdown, every night you stare at the ceiling asking, what's wrong with me? That's not weakness. That's your system trying to reroute you back to center. The soul doesn't give up easily. It will use every language available, dreams, crises, even pain, to get your attention. That's why Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The goal isn't to avoid suffering, it's to understand what it's trying to tell you. Now, let's talk about the greatest illusion of all, the one our culture sells nonstop, the idea that there's one universal model of success, and if you just work hard enough, you'll be happy. That's the lie. The good life looks different for every soul because every soul has a different map. Some are meant to build, some are meant to heal, some are meant to create, some are meant to guide. But when we force everyone into one mold, we amputate our diversity of spirit. And then we wonder why everyone feels broken. It's not because they're flawed, it's because they're trying to live someone else's destiny. The world rewards those who fit in. But your soul rewards those who wake up. It rewards you with peace, clarity, and a sense of direction that no job title can give you. So if you're tired of the endless race, the pretending, the performing, take that exhaustion as a sacred signal. It's not the end, it's the invitation. It's your moment to stop running and start listening. The outer world will keep screaming, go faster, but the inner world whispers, go deeper. This is why Jung called the modern person spiritually homeless. We have roofs over our heads but no shelter for our souls. We've lost the art of introspection. We know how to connect online, but not within. But here's the hope, the path back is still there. It's quieter than the world, but it's there. It begins the moment you stop asking, what should I do, and start asking, who am I underneath all this noise? That question alone can dismantle a lifetime of false identities. So if you feel like you're falling apart, you're not broken, you're being stripped down to something real. That's the first crack of awakening. The self you built is collapsing so that the self you were born with can finally breathe. Society may not celebrate that, but your soul will. Because every breakdown that brings you closer to truth is actually a breakthrough. And in that chaos, the real journey begins, the journey back home to yourself. So, how do you actually know when you're walking the wrong path? It's not always dramatic. It doesn't start with a crisis or some big breakdown. It usually begins quietly. A subtle restlessness. A small, persistent ache that something isn't right. You can't explain it logically, but but you feel it. Like a compass that keeps twitching even when everything around you looks fine. That's the first whisper of the soul. And if you ignore it, those whispers turn into symptoms. They become emotional signals, repeating patterns, strange coincidences that all point to one truth: you are living far from your center. Jung said the soul always tries to bring us back to alignment, but when we don't listen to the whispers, it has no choice but to scream. The first and most common symptom is exhaustion. Not the kind that sleep can fix, but that deep, existential fatigue that lingers no matter how much you rest. You wake up tired, not because your body is weak, but because your spirit is carrying the weight of a false life. When you live disconnected from yourself, every choice requires effort. Every smile feels like acting. Every task feels heavier than it should. That's not laziness. That's your energy being spent maintaining illusions that no longer serve you. Then comes the anxiety, the kind that doesn't seem to have a clear cause. You can't point to one event or person. It's just there, humming underneath everything. That's the soul's way of saying, you're moving in the wrong direction. Think of anxiety as spiritual GPS rerouting you. The discomfort is not a random glitch, it's a message. The more you ignore it, the louder it gets. And when you still refuse to listen, that anxiety can transform into depression, not as punishment, but as a forced pause. The psyche says, you wouldn't stop on your own, so I'm stopping you. Then there are the repetitive patterns. Have you noticed how you keep attracting the same kind of people or ending up in the same kind of emotional mess, no matter how much you promise yourself it'll be different next time? That's not bad luck. That's the unconscious replaying old lessons until you face them consciously. Jung called these complexes emotionally charged clusters of experience that take control of us when we're unaware. They hijack our choices, lead us into déjà vu situations, and force us to confront what we've been avoiding. Until we integrate those complexes, we don't make decisions, we just repeat them. Another sign that you've drifted from your path is the sense of inner falseness. You might have the perfect-looking life, but it feels hollow. You're playing a role that doesn't fit anymore. You smile because it's expected, not because it's real. You feel like you're living behind glass, close enough to touch life, but not really in it. And when you try to fill that emptiness with distractions, shopping, scrolling, working, drinking, chasing new goals, it only deepens. Because no amount of external noise can silence the voice you're trying not to hear. The soul's call doesn't disappear when ignored, it just changes tone. Dreams are another major signal. When you're far from your true path, your unconscious starts sending messages through images, symbols, and stories. Jung called dreams letters from the self. And when you're lost, those letters get urgent. You might dream of being trapped, falling, missing a train, or wandering through abandoned houses. These aren't random images, they're metaphors for your psychological state. A blocked path in a dream often reflects a blocked path in life. Falling might symbolize losing control. A dark house could be an unexplored part of your psyche. The soul communicates through symbols because the conscious mind resists direct confrontation. Dreams bypass your defenses and speak in the language of truth. And then there's that quiet but unmistakable feeling that you are not where you're supposed to be. You could be surrounded by people, even loved ones, and still feel utterly alone. That's the soul's homesickness. It's not about location, it's about orientation. You're facing the wrong direction inwardly. You're living from the ego instead of the self. The ego wants certainty, the self wants authenticity. The ego seeks validation, the self seeks meaning. And the more you feed one, the more the other starves. Eventually, that starvation becomes unbearable. But here's the good news, the same symptoms that make you feel lost are also your map home. Every discomfort is a compass. Every crisis is a course correction. The panic attack, the heartbreak, the burnout, they're not random punishments from life. They're invitations to stop and listen. Jung believed that the soul's goal is wholeness, and it will not rest until you start walking toward it. That's why the same issues keep returning, because they're not finished teaching you. You can suppress the symptoms, medicate them, deny them, but until you understand the message, they'll find new ways to reach you. So, what do you do when you realize you're off track? You stop running. You stop numbing. You stop trying to fix the symptom and start asking what it's trying to say. Why does this keep happening? What am I avoiding? What truth am I refusing to face? The answers are rarely comfortable, but they are always liberating. Because once you begin to interpret your pain as communication instead of failure, you stop fighting it. You start collaborating with it. You begin to see that anxiety is not the enemy, it's the signal flare of your soul trying to guide you back. Being off your path isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of self-awareness. It's your invitation to a deeper kind of living. Jung called it the call to individuation, the moment when your old life stops working because your soul is ready for more. And yes, it's uncomfortable. It's confusing. It feels like everything familiar is dissolving. But that's because something new is being born. You're not being punished, you're being awakened. So if you're in that space right now, where life feels heavy and strange, don't rush to escape it. Listen to it. Study it. Let it teach you where you've strayed. Because the same force that makes you restless is the one that can lead you home. The cracks in your peace are not proof that you're broken. They're proof that your soul is alive and calling you back to yourself. And when you finally listen, you'll realize that being lost was never the problem. It was the path. So far, we've talked about the symptoms, the whispers, the fatigue, the restlessness that tell you something inside is off. But what happens next? What do you actually do once you realize you're lost? This is where most people panic. They want a clear set of steps, a formula, a quick way to fix themselves. But Jung made it clear, the path back to the self isn't about fixing. It's about remembering. It's not about forcing change, it's about listening to what's already been speaking within you all along. The journey of return isn't an intellectual exercise. It's an inner practice of awareness, surrender, and courage. The first and most powerful tool Jung offered us is dream work. He called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. While your conscious mind sleeps, your deeper mind speaks. It uses images, metaphors, and symbols, because those bypass the logical defenses that usually block the truth. Your dreams reveal where you've wandered and what's been neglected. The mistake most people make is brushing them off as nonsense. But those fragments, those strange storylines and symbols, are messages from the self. The unconscious doesn't send you PowerPoint slides, it sends you emotion, imagery, and metaphor. A collapsing bridge may symbolize a broken connection. A locked door may represent a part of yourself you're afraid to enter. A flood could be a wave of emotions you've been suppressing. Start keeping a journal. Write them down. Patterns will emerge. You'll start to see your own psyche communicating with you, guiding you home. Then comes active imagination, Jung's method for bringing the unconscious into dialogue. This isn't fantasy or daydreaming. It's a conscious descent into your own depths. You sit quietly, close your eyes, and allow an image, a feeling, a symbol to arise. You don't control it, you meet it. Maybe it's a shadowy figure, maybe it's a child, maybe it's a landscape. You interact with it. You ask what it wants, what it represents. You let it speak. This process lets the unconscious express itself directly. It gives form to the inner voices that have been influencing you in silence. Jung himself used this practice to face his own darkness. He described it as stepping into the theater of the mind, where the actors are your fears, desires, wounds, and forgotten strengths. It's not comfortable, but it's transformative. The third practice is confronting your shadow. You can't integrate what you deny. You can't heal what you won't face. Facing the shadow means looking at the parts of yourself you've buried, the anger, envy, greed, shame, but also the hidden gifts you've repressed, your confidence, your creativity, your power. We're taught to split ourselves into acceptable and unacceptable parts. The work is to bring them back together. Instead of judging those traits, get curious about them. Ask, What is this feeling trying to teach me? What would happen if I stopped running from this part of myself? Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Integrating the shadow isn't about becoming good, it's about becoming whole. Next, you have to look at your masks, the persona. We all wear them, and they serve a purpose. But the problem starts when the mask grows into your identity. Maybe you've become the caretaker, the achiever, the peacemaker, the one who always has it together. You built that role to be loved or to survive, and it worked, until it didn't. The persona keeps you safe, but it also keeps you stuck. Take a moment and ask yourself, who would I be if I stopped performing? What if I let people see me without the costume? Dismantling the persona is terrifying because it means stepping out of the spotlight and into authenticity. But authenticity is where freedom begins. Then there's the balance between the inner feminine and masculine, what Jung called the anima and animus. This isn't about gender. It's about energy. For men, the anima represents the intuitive, emotional, receptive aspect that connects them to the unconscious. For women, the animus represents the rational, assertive, directional force that brings focus and structure. When these are out of balance, relationships suffer and inner peace collapses. Men who reject their anima become emotionally numb, disconnected from empathy and creativity. Women who deny their animus lose confidence in their voice and direction. The key isn't to favor one over the other, it's to let them dance. When logic and intuition coexist, when action and reflection balance each other, your inner world becomes integrated instead of conflicted. And then there's the rarest but most essential ingredient in all this, silence. Not the kind you fill with podcasts or guided meditations, but real silence. The kind where you turn everything off and simply sit with yourself. It's uncomfortable at first because you're used to drowning out your own thoughts. But that discomfort is gold. That's where the soul speaks. The self doesn't communicate through noise, it whispers in stillness. Jung said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. We scroll, we consume, we talk, we plan, just to avoid sitting quietly. But individuation, the journey back to your center, demands stillness. Because in silence, the unconscious begins to surface gently, safely, truthfully. Now, don't mistake these tools for steps on a checklist. They're not a linear process, they're invitations. Some people start with dream work, others through journaling, therapy, or art. The point isn't the technique, it's the attitude. A willingness to look within, to listen, to not run. The moment you choose to observe instead of escape, the journey begins. The healing isn't in the method, it's in the relationship you build with yourself through it. And here's one last thing Jung always emphasized, the goal isn't to become someone new. It's to uncover the one you already are beneath all the conditioning. Most people approach self-development like a renovation project, tear it down, rebuild from scratch. But individuation is excavation, not construction. You're not broken. You're buried. These practices help you remember what's already there. So as you begin this inner work, stop thinking of it as a self-improvement project. Think of it as a homecoming. The dreams, the silence, the shadow, all of it is your soul's way of saying, welcome back. The work isn't easy, but it's worth every step, because on the other side of that fear, you don't just find clarity. You find yourself. We've arrived at the heart of the journey, the point where everything that was scattered starts to come together. Integration. That word might sound calm, almost gentle, but make no mistake, it's the most demanding and transformative part of all. Integration is not about becoming perfect. It's not about wiping away your flaws or ascending into some blissful, enlightened state. It's about owning every piece of who you are. The bright and the broken. The parts you love and the parts you've tried to bury. It's standing in the middle of your own contradictions and realizing they were never enemies, they were fragments of one story waiting to be told as a whole. For most people, the idea of healing means eliminating pain, escaping darkness, replacing weakness with strength. But real healing doesn't erase anything. It includes everything. Jung said that integration means accepting your shadow, not destroying it. Because every emotion, even the ugly ones, carries wisdom. Anger shows where your boundaries were crossed. Fear points to what matters deeply to you. Sadness reveals the depth of your capacity to love. When you reject these parts, you fragment yourself. When you bring them back home, you become whole. Integration begins with awareness, with that quiet but powerful moment when you can say, yes, that's me too. The envy, the insecurity, the arrogance, the longing, the tenderness, the compassion, it's all you. When you stop dividing yourself into good and bad, when you stop policing your own humanity, you begin to live from your center. And here's the paradox: the more you embrace your darkness, the more light you have. Because the energy you once spent hiding is now free to create, to love, to build, to live. But let's be honest, this process isn't glamorous. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it often feels like you're going backward. That's because integration isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You revisit the same wounds again and again, but each time from a deeper level of understanding. You start recognizing patterns in your reactions, you catch your projections faster, you stop blaming others for what's unresolved within you. And slowly, something shifts. Life stops feeling like a fight. You stop trying to fix everything and begin to relate to it instead. That's when growth turns into grace. One of Jung's most powerful ideas was that the goal of life is not perfection, it's wholeness. Wholeness means you no longer need to perform for approval or hide for safety. You can stand in your truth without apology. You can feel joy without guilt and pain without panic. You can hold contradictions, strength and vulnerability, confidence and humility, love and anger, without collapsing. Integration is when you stop living from fragments and start living from the self, that deep, unshakable center that knows exactly who you are. And when that happens, everything around you begins to change. Anxiety softens, not because it disappears, but because it no longer needs to scream to get your attention. Relationships become richer, not because everyone else changes, but because you stop projecting your unhealed parts onto them. You begin to see others with clarity instead of through the fog of your own wounds. The same situations that once triggered you now become invitations to awareness. You start responding instead of reacting. You begin to live consciously. But integration doesn't mean the end of struggle. It means you've learned how to hold it differently. You don't collapse under it anymore. You don't run from discomfort, you sit with it. You don't chase happiness, you cultivate meaning. You stop waiting for peace to appear when everything is fixed and start discovering peace in the middle of everything. That's maturity, the ability to stay present with both the storm and the sunlight. And here's the part that most people miss: integration is not a destination. It's a lifelong relationship. You don't reach it once and stay there forever. Life will keep testing you, stretching you, breaking you open in new ways. Every challenge will reveal another layer of your psyche that wants to be seen. Every ending will demand another rebirth. That's the dance between the conscious and the unconscious, between what you know and what you're becoming. And each time you go through it, you return to yourself with more depth, more humility, more truth. So what does life look like after integration begins? It looks quieter, but more powerful. You stop chasing extremes and start appreciating balance. You stop measuring your worth by achievements and start feeling it from within. You stop trying to prove your light and begin to understand that it was never gone, it was just hidden behind the walls you built to survive. You stop looking for someone to save you because you realize you were never lost, only unremembered. And that's the essence of individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you are." Think about that. Not who others expect. Not who you were told to be. But who you already are underneath the noise. That's not arrogance, that's responsibility. Because when you live from your authentic self, you give permission for others to do the same. You stop feeding the collective illusion of perfection and start contributing to the collective movement toward truth. Maybe that's why the world feels so restless right now, because too many people are living half-lives, disconnected from their wholeness. But imagine if more of us began this work. Imagine a world where people acted not from their wounds but from their integration. Where leaders were self-aware, lovers were honest, families were grounded, and communities valued depth over performance. That's not a fantasy, that's evolution. And it starts with you. So as we close this journey, I want you to remember this: you were never broken. You were never off course. Every detour, every heartbreak, every dark night was part of your map. Integration isn't about finding yourself, it's about realizing you were never truly lost. Everything you needed has been with you from the beginning. The map, the symbols, the pain, the beauty, all of it. The only question now is, will you use it? Will you live from the wholeness that's been waiting inside you all along? Because the truth is, your soul already knows the way home. It always has. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below, I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.